The thing is that there are legal requirements for movie making which stipulate in large amounts of paperwork that get procured before anybody gets involved, which end up being titles. And I wanted to ask you, Richard, we're going to go back and ask how you got into the business, but I think looking at that, it's interesting to know what you think titles can do for a movie. What is the job, before we go back, wind back and then up where you are and your thought process, but they convey information, they have legal requirements. We always, in my line of work, say let's start on the titles of the film before we've actually made the film, because they generally take so long to ratify the information that you need as a graphic designer and designer. So tell me what you think is what is it they can do other than convey the necessary legal requirements that all films demand, front and end or whatever?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, Mick, and everybody, is that depending on the script, because normally I'll start with the script, I'll work out from the script, is there any elements, because I haven't seen anything that's shot. So I think I'll read the script and then I will actually pick out ingredients. So very much like if you all do cooking, you know, if you read a recipe, you've then got to find those ingredients. So it's a little bit like that. And what I'll do is I'll just jot down in a margin all lots of random words that I picked in the script. So they could be colours, they could be some action thing, it could be anything that kind of just triggers my imagination. And then the next stage will be, say Mick's the editor, and he'll say, well, definitely, Richard, the producers have said they want a 2.5-minute opener. Have you got any ideas? Well, luckily, because I've already started the process, all I now need to do is to work out that 2.5 minutes, what visually could string together to take you into the film. And what I tend to do is I start with don't start with the beginning, I start with the end. And why I say the end is that when you seamlessly go through a title sequence to your first frame of live action, it wants to be seamless. It doesn't want to look like that's chopped on, then that happens. So the whole thing's got to be integrated together.
So it is like a good what meal. I'm saying, it's part of the film.
It's part of the
it's
film.
A chapter of the film.
So then the process will be very much like I'm sure you're all used to. You will make a mood board. We'll sketch stuff. We still use pencils, believe it or not.
What is that?
Yes, actually, things with lead in. So we'll use any part of our kit in order to convey an idea. But remember, because we're showing to start with still images, you have to put a lot of trust in a sort of, not a committee, Mick, is it? It's we all work together in a framework, so that basically I've got a lot of storyboard single frames. So I would need to make sure the director, producer, the editor, whoever's involved, that I can actually deliver those frames and they will work. So there's a lot of trust involved. And the only way I've got the trust is by constantly doing it. So you build up a reputation. So back to the cooking analogy, the more you cook, the better your food, the more people trust you when they come round to dinner.
And
does that help?
They don't phone in sick the next day.
If they phone in sick, it's really gone badly wrong and you need to get into another career.
But do you think that, I mean, so the job, do you give yourself a brief in and above the information, which is, let's say just the simple thing of there are actors in a film. And who's produced it and all that stuff. What you've got to sell or communicate before the film starts, or possibly you choose to put it at the end, but let's say it's at the beginning. What are the jobs you feel are necessary in general to encapsulate that movie so that the audience goes into the story, if you like, having unwrapped the right sort of packaging to be positioned correctly for the story that then follows? And what I can say, we hope without embarrassing Richard, is that Richard can read a film very, very well. So the process of encapsulating it with the sort of packaging, which titles is your gift and talent. So how does that work, and what sort of criteria do you give yourself before you pitch the ideas for the title?
Well, let's take a film. It's probably the best thing to do, because as you all know, they're all so different. That's the thing. I never do the same thing twice. So if we look, like, for instance, we saw on there, let's say the films I've done with Tim Burton. So let's take, not
Sweeney
Batman.
Todd?
Sweeney Todd. Let's take Sweeney Todd, for instance. So with Tim, normally when he uses me, it's when he wants to have a narrative sequence. So it's telling a partial story. So
that comes from him. That's
yeah,
my
that
point.
comes from him.
The brief to package the film is let's go for the narrative. Yeah.
So if you've ever seen that film, you know, you start coming up the Thames on the boat. If any of you've seen it,
Has anybody seen it?
Anybody seen
Have
it?
everybody seen the Sweeney Todd?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
Catastrophe. Right.
You
Have you?
sort of have. Yeah.
You
Well,
sort of
anyway, so there's this coming back up the Thames shot. So what Tim said to me, he said, "Richard, can you find a way of encapsulating his dream of coming back to London to revenge what has happened to him?" So I think about that, and then I think in a very abstract way. So if you know anything about Sweeney Todd, it has got a lot of blood involved.
A lot of shaving.
A lot of shaving. So I thought to myself, why don't we start the journey from up in the sky, and instead of rain coming down, because living in London there's a lot of rain, why don't we have that rain to be blood? So it's raining down blood, and then basically make a journey out of the blood. So if you go onto our website, you can actually see the sequence. But basically what happens is you follow the trail of blood all the way down through the house, all the way down into the sewers, through the sewers, out, and then you join the boat. So it's seamless. But what you've done is you've kind of told in a semi sort of surreal way what is actually going to happen. But you haven't been so specific that you've given the game away.
So there must be a danger that you...
Yeah, it's a fine line.
The packaging of the film in the titles is too transparent and gives away the parcel. Yeah. So
But
you've got to walk a tightrope.
It's a tight line. But we probably came up on that occasion with about 9 ideas for Tim. And we basically just throw them on the floor.
In what form are they in at that stage?
Paper.
Just drawings?
Yeah, Tim likes it if you can sketch it and make it really fast, because he can see an idea in a nanosecond. You don't need loads of explaining. He'll spot it straight away. So we just chucked them on the floor, and then Tim just looks around and just sees something. And then what he decided to do is pick up a drawing that I'd done, just showing very quickly that this blood goes down, blah, 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 throw in some red, and that's it. And then he picked another one of our designers that had done a colour style way, and he said to me, there's the two things, let's put the two things together. Keep that as the colour palette and go with your narrative of the journey. And there we have it.
And did that come at that point? He's given you a brief.
Yeah.
There's a manufacturing problem to solve, which is how to be in the sky and make
and how do we make it?
And how that works with the producership of the film to cost it out.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Do you both go, director and designer, to say, this is what we want to do, will you give us a budget?
Okay, well with Tim, as he commands all. So if he says he wants something, the producers that work with him just pay. Tim has that sort of command. So I knew I was on good ground to come up and make it as, you know, what Tim wanted. And then it's basically down to, on a sequence like that, you're using live action, 3D, photo montage, animation.
So it was easy.
It was easy. So basically what you do is you then put a team together, you work with a production manager, and you work out your budget. So the pretty stuff, the fun stuff, you know, which you see on the screen, it's the backroom stuff. That's where you need to work. You know, that's why it's nice to work with a team. Although I can come up with ideas, having the idea is one thing, making it is something else, as Mick and Eddie have said earlier in the earlier talk. If you work in a group and you're all swapping ideas and moving it around, it's amazing how much you can get done, even when it looks slightly impossible.
In the case of Tim's film, Sweeney Todd, obviously the film is quite a way down its production process.
Yeah.
And you obviously have to see the movie, the cut of that movie. Or
no, I only saw a rough. Yeah, I only saw a rough of it.
And that's where you have to go and have ideas.
But I'd already knew the story and read the script.
Yes.
So it's back to that little notations in the margin.
Yes.
So important.
So getting the ideas,
Yeah.
is that the difficult bit? Or is it,
Well, that
or
leads
is it positioning yourself? I mean, Tim is obviously a very visual man.
Yeah,
and
we're just
draws
using one project here.
Yeah.
Because Tim's are always very complicated by its nature. Other jobs have other different sorts of problems, but I always know what Tim's thing is going to be. It's going to be, what is the narrative? What is the...
So the timeline of your involvement in that film was, well, they've got a cut, first cut, second cut. They're sort of, the film's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it's in pretty good shape, yeah.
And is that normal? You'll get involved, or do you get involved very late when everybody goes, "Oh, we've made the film. Oh my God, we've got to credit the actors now."
Well, I think, as you know, Mick, it can come in different phases. I mean, people that really know me and they know what's involved, they will say quite early on. So even before shooting's finished, they kind of know that I'll be working with them at some point.
Yes.
So as soon as I get that script, honestly, the script is, to me, the paramount thing to have, because then I'm not what's the word? I'm not fazed by the live action. It's I think Eddie was talking about that earlier. It's or Mick was this thing about listening. It's also about not having sound, not having babble going on in my head. I want to read it as the scriptwriter has written it, because then it allows your imagination, a bit like when you all read a book, it's much better that your imagination is stimulated on the page before you go visual.
What you're talking
That's
about
what
is
I'm thinking.
the germ of the thing.
The germ is
and
the
the
word.
affectations, even the director's work and all the other contributors.
Yeah. If I was more intellectual, I could give you a really good précis of that.
You're doing fine.
But I always stress that to students. Don't get too caught up with visuals immediately. Be much more in your own engine.
So what you're saying, if I'm reading it correctly, and we can discuss this when we get everybody involved, but go right back to the roots, because the filmmaking process eventually, for everybody, starts with a screenplay.
That's right.
And your reaction to that screenplay is a one-off reaction.
Yeah.
Once you read it again, this is what we're making.
That's right.
And that response, if I'm right, Richie, is that response is critical in what gives you the pool in which to look for your
So I don't get
ideas.
over-seduced by the thing when I see it visually.
Yeah.
Because big actors, big stars, big shots, they can take you in the wrong way for the job that I have to do.
Are all directors as involved in the titles processes, front end, middle, whatever, as Tim? Or have you had people who say, there's somebody that we mutually know who will say, that's not really my job.
Stephen, bless him.
Yeah,
he
says
to Mick and I leave it to you two, you're the experts. So we go, hang on, Stephen, aren't you the director?
Yeah, he said that's not my where the end titles begin and my job ends. Yeah. And I have to say I don't agree with that.
No.
I mean, not from a point of view that I think a director should be responsible for every visual part of the movie.
Yeah, because it's their vision we're making.
And anyway, an audience sees them as responsible.
That's right.
But is that the case that reading between the lines, that generally your work is primarily for the director and editorial crew because it's an editorial process?
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Or is it also for the producers who are paying our wages and who have to go out and sell the film and maybe aware of the audiences in a way in which we are not?
I think it's back to the listening thing again. I'm very good at the listening, and again, I go back to what Eddie was saying earlier. The listening is key in this game. You have to listen to the different voices that are giving you the brief or telling you the story, and it could be a producer, it could be assistant editor, it could be the editor, it could be... You need to because they've been on the film a long time, much longer than I've been on the film. So the listening thing is really key. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
It's odd that we're all saying that you have to learn really in the professional world to be a mixture of open, but also very self-motivated.
Yeah, there's no point just sort of going off like a fizzy drink bottle. It's not going to get you anywhere. And much better to be quiet and say nothing. I do that.
I know, I understand. Listen. And would you say, you explained how you put, in this case with Tim, it might be drawings.
Yeah.
Are you finding, because of the digital world, that pre-visualization or even moving bits are a requirement to sell a concept for a titles design sequence?
It is a bit, it has moved.
And people
a bit
can
that way.
spend money on that because
they
they're
can.
not able to look at
Well, I think, again, it's another mistake I'd say at this stage, is people are too quick to go to, let's see it animating, let's see it live out, let's see it moving. Whoa, hang on a minute. Have we really thought it through first? Because the thinking through phase is so important. You know, and the moment you start, let's say you've got the skeleton of something, so I'm quite happy to make an animatic, that's fine, do that all the time.
Just for everybody,
Do you know
what is an
animatic?
animatic?
It's a
Do
rough
you all know what
moving
an
test.
animatic is?
No?
An animatic moves,
Yeah, it moves,
but it's crude.
but it's crude. So it's a lot of line work that you just shoot to do the length of time that you're going to work over.
That comes out of your overall budget, presumably.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. I don't mind that, that's fine. Animatics is good because it tests things out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's a
Yeah.
bit like throwing a load of Post-it notes on the ground.
Yes. Got you.
It does work. But what happens at the moment is you've got a framework, and as Mick's quite right, it could be from the marketing, it could be from the producers, or the panic because there's not enough time. And what they want you to do is dress it immediately and make it move. Well, that's okay, but the mistake with that is you're seduced again by something that's not actually quite thought through. And then when you really
Half-baked.
it's half-baked. And I think audiences can tell. And what happens now in the digital world with so much software, what I keep seeing now from students and professionals is I see them using the same software on different jobs, and all the jobs are starting to look the same. Because
What does the software
process,
do?
Well,
It could be just...
the software it gives you an effect.
Right.
And all I do is keep seeing these same effects being used, which is now, what it's doing is it's chucking perfume onto something, but
Without
actually it's
building-
covering up a bad idea is what it's doing.
Yeah. And if
We could do a whole hour just on that subject alone, so we better move on.
well, no, that's I think it's integral,
Yeah.
especially for those of you that are interested in titles, or you know, any of you as filmmakers.
Or filmmakers, yeah.
Will have to deal with it, whether you're directly involved or not, or being asked to understand what the effect of this is on the actual body of the film. And I think that
And it
that's
lives
an
forever.
interesting-
Once you've done it, it's lived forever, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's there, you know. You go, oh my God, did we do that? Yeah.
You were talking about presenting things to Tim Burton, and obviously your job is highly creative and individual and involves a selling technique
Yeah.
in what you believe is what you've assimilated from the film and is correct to express in the many aspects of the title's design. Have you got a notion for all of us here who might find ourselves not just selling graphic design for a film, but all creative ideas actually, that you know, what would your advice be in the technique that you have gathered in order to put those things across forcibly but also openly, and to be as flexible as I know you are as a person? What's the trick?
Practice every day.
What, try and sell graphic design sequence to the milkman? Or?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate. I've grown up in a time where, you know, I've done branding for TV channels around the world. I've done advertising agency work, film titles, graphic design, painting, photography. So, and all your clients from all those different worlds come in different ways. But the key thing is just, it is practice. I do it every day. So it's not down to whether I'm doing a project or not, it's every day. And you just become better and better and better at it. So for instance, if you're asking a question to, let's say, a concert pianist, every concert pianist you will meet, doesn't matter how big or how successful they are, they practice 4 hours a day, minimum. And it's that. And I think it came out again this morning. It's if you haven't got the passion, it's I'd advise not to do it, because the heat in the kitchen, when it gets going,
Take your eyebrows off.
it take your eyebrows off, literally.
Yeah.
So you have to get up every morning with that passion, with that drive, and you'll come up against things that fail. You'll try different things. You think, oh God, why are other people beating us? Why can't we get the right ideas? And you have frustration. You'll have sleepless nights. I can tell you all the bad things, but when it works, and your work, no matter what part you are doing, whether you're makeup, sound, editing, whatever it is, when you see your work on a big screen, you go, wow, that's why I do it.
So that's the hook.
That's the hook.
Yeah.
And it's like a drug. Once you get a taste for it and you've had a little bit of success, you go, oh man, I know what they're all talking about now. This is fantastic. And you just want to do it every day. What happens, though, is it doesn't happen every day, so you have to go back to your own. I talk about a lot about find your own inner engine, whatever that might be. You know, whether it's your inner engine is to be the greatest makeup artist or the great costume designer. It doesn't matter. Once you lock into what your engine is, that's where you find the passion. That's why you find that you'll go through anything to get your job or to work with certain people. There's certain people I always wanted to work for, and I make it like a visual thing in my head. Oh, I want to work with Tim. I'd like to work with Tim, or whoever it might be. Oh, John Donner was the last one. I really liked John Donner's film, The Guard, and I thought I'd really like to meet him. I like his writing. So I just put a vision in my head that that's going to happen. And
You
lo
set
and
yourself a
behold,
goal.
it did. And I did Calvary for him. And then at the end of that little compendium there, that's his latest film, War on Everyone. And that's the sequence. But again, you know, it's those kind of things. You just go, wow, that's, you know, it's kind of made my day sort of idea, you know. And you just keep doing it.
But needless to say, I mean, something that... Jesse's got to do some miking stuff here. All right, Jesse, we good for sound? Good for sound. We're good. Just to reiterate, though, that, you know, the world that you inhabit creating titles design is so many of the arts of filmmaking in one unit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you are a photographer of great skills. You know, your visual education, your visual world is very sophisticated, but you also, you know, you can edit and you have a musical sense, and all those things come into the domain of what you have to pitch to sell.
Yeah.
And presumably, I'm thinking of the students here today, that anything we can absorb of those disciplines allows us to have a reasonable debate when we're pitching our job, our idea to others, because you've got to learn the language.
Correct.
Because they may not be able to discuss it. I mean, I don't know if you'd agree, but many of the directors I've worked with, I get a sense of things, but they're not not always very articulate.
No.
But you sort of get it if you understand the world. And would you say, because graphic design for films, titles design is becomes such a big issue, would you say that as a tip to budding designers and indeed filmmakers in general, you've got to have all that language and the understanding of those processes under your belt that you can participate in a dialogue?
You need a proper broad church education in it, and that's why I say it's every day. So, you know, whatever it is, you need to go to galleries, you need to read poetry, you need to go to, you know, all kinds of events. I think Mick was advising, watch all different films from all different genres. Don't get stuck in one area of, I want to watch horror films or whatever it is. You need to take a broad church on all of this stuff. And actually, it's really good fun to take a broad church. And it's also... like even with your friends or colleagues or whatever, the more variations you have in your teams of people that you mix around with, it could be musicians, comics, whatever it is, the richer the mix that you evolve yourself with, the stronger your own engine works. That's what I'd say. The moment you limit yourself, you've got a problem. The moment I think, oh, technology is too complicated for me, oh, I just can't handle it, it's over. Because actually, I don't need to drive certain bits of technology, but what I do need to do is to communicate to somebody that's on Flame or After Effects or whatever it is.
What you want.
Yeah, exactly. And I need to make them feel that I have their passion at heart as well, because they're part of the team, let's say. So it's that embracing thing,
And
it works.
How big is your team? Say for Tim's film, as we're
There are
using
probably
that.
7 or 8 of us on that, plus a live action shoot, which will be 2 days of live action. Then
But you directed the live action.
Yeah, I direct the live action. Yeah.
So that's why I mean you've got to be a complete filmmaker.
Yeah.
In order to get into that.
I mean, many people have said, "Why didn't you become a director?"
Why didn't? Yes.
I don't know. I just didn't. I just quite like the short form. I like the quick turnaround. I don't think. No, I just didn't want to go down that road.
No. Also,
I kind of knew that quite early on, which was lucky.
But most directors have to be producers as well, don't they?
Too hard.
To bully the money out of whoever was willing to write the check.
Yeah.
But you must also have to. We're talking about budgeting a little bit. You know, do you often think, "Oh my God, this idea I've got is perfect for this movie," but I can immediately see that the piggy bank isn't going to be large enough.
Yeah, it is
so
true.
Then do you have to, how do you then go about the process of compromise, knowing in your mind's eye that this is going to be the perfect packaging for that film?
That's a big question. I think, again, it's experience again. I'm still making mistakes even now. We're doing a presentation for Monday, and we've got like 7 ideas all drawn up, and already 4 of them, the client was not going to be able to afford them. So I've said to some of my colleagues working on it with me, just let's leave it in there, because you never know, they might suddenly say we'll find more money.
Yes.
So,
but will you present, having got those 7, I presume fairly different?
Yeah, fairly different sort of visual languages.
Does that confuse the client?
No, because I do the selling. So
that's the bit I'm interested in. How do you do the selling?
You have to be a little bit of a comedian, and you have to be very reassured, and you have to be really positive. You can't give more energy to one set of visuals and not to the other. You've got to be quite equal right across.
So you can't give away your
No, I can't give away. Well, you get it out of me occasionally because you know me.
But I can see that just in the way we all operate as human beings, is that you're going to be, oh, this is the one to use.
Yeah, I'll tell you a good tip. Play poker. That's a good way to do it with your friends and just see. Yeah. So there's many little tricks that you can pull off. I'm sort of known for certain odd things, and people you get known for things, and that's quite good. So create a little bit of myth is what I'd say. That works quite well. Doesn't work with Mick because he knows me too well.
But how does that work in practice? What's a sort of?
I think in your language, the way you conduct yourself, you can come with little visual tricks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm known for wearing hats, for instance.
Do they find their way into the sequences?
No. But there's fun things. It's let's put it another way around. Let's look at the dark side of this thing. This industry, if you want to call it the film or creative world, whatever it is, it's a fantastic industry. I mean, it's such fun. I mean, we have great laughs. You know, I mean, it's really excellent. I can strongly advise you to go into this.
Yes. I thought we were here to try and dissuade you.
So
obviously not.
Yes, it's. But it is. One of my phrases is that I could impart this to you straight away. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon, and it's much better that you kind of know that now. No.
Is that true also of each individual job, not just the longevity?
The whole thing. And look at all the technology that's happened just in my lifetime, our lifetime.
I was going to ask.
Look how that's done that. I mean, come on, who could have seen that? You couldn't be a fortune teller. I mean, to see what's happened in our industry.
Do you think the techniques that we now all accept as everyday life, the digital speed and the fact that we can produce roughs of things that are very sophisticated.
Very quickly, it's really great.
Has that changed things for you?
Totally.
Or is it a nightmare because people want you to reinvent things all the time before they commit to...
I want to reinvent things all the time. So my own personal passion is, I'm not settled on things that I know. I'm always trying to find things that I don't know.
Yes.
But the great things are, for instance, if you look at, you all know what Pinterest is, do you?
Anybody?
Pinterest, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
What
it's
is it? I don't.
Well, it's a great way of sourcing to make a quick mock-up board with. So you can grab influences and stick them together and make a, oh look, that's what we're looking for. As where,
Well,
you know,
it's bringing visual imagery.
yeah,
in,
really quickly, really fast. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's really good. So where before we'd spend days in the library, you know, now a couple of hours on Pinterest,
Away
I
you
can
go.
pull stuff around and there it is. So that's great, but I don't rely on that. So it's much better instead of, let's say it this way around. For me, I can only talk from my own engine, of course. Instead of streaming, I prefer dreaming.
Like it, yeah.
Yeah? So, but I know that in my own self. You guys might not know that. You may think, oh, Pinterest is the way to, I'm using just that as the one analogy. You may think, oh God, that's the only way to do it. No, it's not. That's helping, but still the dreaming thing is the thing to be connected to, not the streaming thing. So no ideas are going to come out of that Mac, I can tell you that for now. What
Well,
will
not the
come
one
out,
you bought.
not the one I bought. No, I love it. That's what I'm saying. It's the technology thing is fantastic. You know, no problem with it. Feature films now can be made, Lord of the Rings, whatever, which could never have been made 20 years ago. That's down to technology. That's down to the fact that your vision can be made. It's just the size of your budget.
Yeah.
As Eddie was saying, you know, on the bonds and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's just the size of budget.
Yeah.
But most of what we have to do is quite small scale things where you need to use a lot of imagination and a lot of power in order to make something happen.
You know, you were talking, Richard, about you know, having to read a script, and that for you personally is the where you absolutely need a
Definitely.
footing.
Yeah.
Can with everybody here this afternoon, have you got an insight of how to develop that sort of relationship in that part of what for you is a very valuable part of the process? You know, in other words, I know from an editing point of view, it took me a very long time to learn how to read a script, because they're kind of weird things.
Oh, they are
aren't they?
weird things.
They're kind of a weird document. It's like
Yeah, they are.
everybody
Have you
says,
ever read a script? Have you read a 90-page script? They're
Yeah.
quite weird.
yeah,
That
I
is
mean,
true.
And
There's
you
a
have
different language in there. The words are one thing, but the language of the way you read it is quite odd.
yeah. And I was going to say, if you're very reliant on that first encounter with the
Yeah.
project, rather than somebody sitting down, Richard, I'm making a film about this, and them telling you verbally,
Yeah.
you're reading this thing off the page. There's a million visual things which are not apparent in what you're reading.
No, absolutely not.
So this moment of contact for you,
Yeah.
which is so important to you, as I
Yeah.
understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is about reading something, interpreting something, and then what happens when you see the actual movie? Because when you've read this thing, you say, "Oh, I know what I'm going to do for the title."
Oh no, I don't. Sorry, Mick. I don't know what I'm going to do at that stage.
You just absorb it.
I'm absorbing it, and that's what I'm saying. That's the important part of it. It's the listening thing again. So by reading it, you're visualizing between the lines. So how can I describe it? Give you an analogy of this. In music, you hear a piece of music, you don't hear the spaces in between the notes, but the spaces in between are the important bits.
Yes,
Yeah?
And they often give the feeling of it.
Correct.
Yes, yeah.
So that's why I would urge you to read scripts or read books, because it will teach you. It will teach you an inner voice, instead of having stuff coming at you all the time. Much better to be quiet with something, which I know it sounds a bit laborious, and you think, oh, Richard, what is he talking about? Oh, fart, you know. But actually,
No, none of us thought that.
Yeah, I can bang on a bit, you know, because I'm very passionate about the whole creative thing, and I think you can tell by my voice, I'm extremely excited about it. And when students and I work with other people that have the same passion, whether they're painters, musicians, sculptors, whatever, I mean, I just love it. The whole thing is a kaleidoscope of amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
To give your voice a rest, I'm just going to see if there's anybody around, just to try and make this a little bit more intimate, of questions that you might have about the things that I'm interested to know, you know, what all of your aspirations are,
Yeah.
and to try and get the best out of Richard. Is there anybody here who has, you know, feels now that we've talked about this process, who wants to be a titles designer,
Or a
who's
creative.
who's curious about this acquisition of, in this particular case, a knowledge about what I believe is just basically understanding film drama when it's on the page.
Yeah.
Is there anybody here wants to question that or talk about that or ask Richard about how?
You can ask me anything.
Anybody? No? Yes. Just want to throw this open a bit so we can loosen it up.
Thank you. I was wondering, when it comes to making titles for, say, Sweetheart or any other sort of film, do you get given a set duration, like a track, or do you create the titles and then the audio and stuff like that come later?
That's a good question. What happens there is, I think, again, Mick was saying in his editing process, where he will not actually have the dialogue all the time. He'll just look at the actors' faces or their reactions first. So with a title sequence, I don't want any sound. I work totally without any sound. I've got to get the visual notes in my head first, and then what we do, back to an animatic idea or a storyboard. Once certain members of the team have said, "Yep, that's really good," I know I've drawn in enough points so that when we hand it over to the composer, they've already now got a visual and they can see where they've got to go. So it's much better to work that way rather than give me a 2 or 3 minute score and then say, now fit visuals to it. I go, oh my God, no, it's the wrong way around. You want the visuals and the planning first, and then you start to add the sound. Because it won't just be a score, it'll be sound design, it could be all sorts of things. So much better to have that blank first is the best way around.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else?
Eddie's got a question.
Please, Eddie.
This will be terrifying.
He's going to do some karaoke while he's doing
How can it be terrifying? When you did the end roller for Enemy at the Gates, it was very distinct end roller, which was a
The Russian
40s,
constructionist.
50s.
Yeah.
How much of that was you? How much of that was the director? How did that evolve?
That evolved by because.
What was it like? Just because I'm struck. I just want to
It's
remember.
Russian constructionist art on the end.
Got you.
So with Jean-Jacques, we tried many things on the front first of all, because the whole. If you've seen the film, it's Jean-Jacques felt that people need to know. Excuse me. They need to know where Stalingrad was. So we started this whole idea of having a Reichstag eagle in 3D, and it was going to fly across and take you to Stalingrad. I don't know if you know that bit. Anyway, I said to Jean-Jacques, I think it's going to be quite hard to make this thing fly. So Jean-Jacques is such a fun, amazing guy. He said, no, we've got the budget. Let's get it made and just see if it would work. And, of course, it didn't work at all. It just looked awful. So I said to Jean-Jacques, why don't we do it as a shadow? So that's what we did. So we worked out how to open the film. And because of the nature of the fact of Russian constructionist art, which is of the time, Jean-Jacques had a love for that, and he showed me loads of posters and stuff that he'd got. And he said, Richard, could we construct the whole end sequence like that? So I said, yeah, of course we can. That's absolutely fine. So that's how it came about. Jean-Jacques laid down the gauntlet, of which I then had to stand on. And then, so
was
we did time.
Was there a parity between the front and the end? I can't remember.
The front only has Enemy at the Gates and the map. And on the end,
And then off you
you've
went.
got 7 minutes, is it, Ed? It's a long time. Yeah, 7 or 8 minutes on the end. So we all had this great fun of creating all this Russian constructionist stuff. And of course, when the American distributor saw it, they went crazy and said, we can't read the type because it's all upside down and round the wrong way. But Jean-Jacques, being Jean-Jacques, said, well, that's what I want, and that's what we're having, and that's what stayed.
Yes, he was brilliant.
He was amazing. Well, yeah, because he had great trust, and again, like Tim Burton and other great directors, if they push something through, it's just the best possible.
Which leads me to that thing of, is there frequently a split between the producer's needs for the packaging, if you like? Or
I think so. It depends who's got the power.
And the directors.
Yeah.
And, you know, that like all the editorial process comes to some sort of,
Yeah.
you know, conflict or.
Yeah. Well, on TV, the script writers have more power than the directors on TV, and film it's the other way around.
I'm gonna have to wind up, am I, or run things a bit fast now? Oh, Trish is going to say.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, out of all the work that you've done, what was the most enjoyable title sequence to work on? What was the least enjoyable title sequence to work on?
Oh.
And
Oh, there's 3 questions in one. This
what other title sequence that you haven't actually
Done.
made
Yeah.
would you have liked to have made?
Starting with the first one.
Starting with the first one.
What was the first one? I've forgotten that. It was such a long question.
It's a long way back, wasn't it?
It's like end rollers. It went over.
You've lost the will
what
to
am I
live
most
already.
happiest with?
What was the most enjoyable title sequence that you've had to make?
High Fidelity.
Yeah, High Fidelity, because mixing here. No, actually, High Fidelity was good fun.
No, it was
because
brilliant,
again, we
wasn't
broke
it?
ground with that.
Yeah.
So it was great fun. I mean, I've been very lucky because, I mean, I've probably done, I don't know, 300 title sequences probably. So it's the people, to be honest. A lot of it is down to how much fun or energy did we have actually on a particular job.
What was the second question, Trish? Oh, least. Dish to dirt, Richard. Come on.
Nocturnal Animals, Tom Ford.
Oh, it's just come out. hasn't it?
Yeah. Oof.
Why did you find that? Why? Was
Because
it?
he didn't really need anybody. He might as well just done it himself.
Ah, right.
You heard it here first.
Heard it here first, yeah.
Go and see the film. Have any of you seen it? It's just out.
Yeah.
No.
No? Nobody's
Anyway,
seen
move
it?
on
No,
from
no,
that.
we haven't.
I
Shall we
like-
gloss over that
Yeah,
one?
gloss over
And
that.
the
That's
third
all
one, the third part of the question was what title sequence would you have liked to have made, if you could, that you haven't? Obviously,
I
someone
haven't.
else's work,
It'd
yeah.
probably be Saul Bass. It's things like Goodfellas, Casino, great sequence on the front.
Actually,
Cape Fear.
Psycho.
Cape Fear,
Psycho. has a great one.
Psycho, amazing title sequence.
And Psycho.
Do all of you here share or know about the legendary Saul Bass, who was a sort of giant in
If
the...
you don't, look him up.
Yeah, and anyway, yeah.
Graphic designer,
extraordinary.
storyteller, filmmaker, title sequence.
Revered, yeah.
Top.
Don't miss out.
Don't miss out on that.
I just want to round up by saying thanks to Trish and Julian and Stuart and everybody that's invited us down today, but hope that all of you, you know, will see us as people who are just slogging on, doing
We're
our
the same
jobs.
as you.
And yeah, we've all come from where you are now, and for better or for worse. And that I think the bottom line of what we've got to give today is about sharing in the creative process and learning how to be open. And I hope my other friends will agree with this. And that's the big thing to work on.
And enjoy it.
And
Smile every day.
have
It's
a good
fantastic.
ride. Have a good
Yeah.
ride. Thank you very much for coming to see us. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Richie.